Welcome to our deep dive into the fascinating world of money.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're looking at how it works,
Oh?
where it comes from,
Yeah.
and how governments have influenced it throughout history. We'll be exploring excerpts from Murray Rothbard's What Has Government Done to Our Money?
Okay.
Get ready to see those dollar bills in a whole new light.
It's really fascinating how Rothbard challenges conventional wisdom about monetary policy.
Yeah.
He makes a very compelling case
Yeah.
that a free market is not only capable of handling money, but could even be the ideal system for it.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Why do we even need money?
Well, imagine trying to barter your way through life.
Okay.
You're a skilled programmer who needs groceries.
Right.
Good luck convincing the supermarket to trade you lines of code for a loaf of bread.
Right.
That's the beauty of money.
Yeah.
It acts as a common medium of exchange,
Oh.
simplifying transactions and allowing for specialization and economic growth.
So instead of hauling around my laptop to the grocery store, I can just use money to buy what I need.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Money acts as a common language that everyone in the market understands.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that historically, money wasn't something imposed by governments.
Okay.
It evolved naturally from the marketplace.
So it wasn't some king who woke up one day and declared, gold is money.
Not quite.
Okay.
Commodities like gold and silver rose to prominence because they possessed qualities that made them ideal for exchange.
Mm-hmm.
They were durable,
Yeah.
divisible,
Makes you-
easily transportable,
Right.
and most importantly, people valued them.
Okay.
They were chosen by the market,
Yeah.
not decreed by authority.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But doesn't the shape or form of money matter? Is a gold bar as good as a gold coin?
That's a common misconception
Uh-huh.
that Rothbard tackles head on.
Yeah.
He argues that the shape of money is irrelevant,
Okay.
whether it's a coin,
Yeah.
a bar, or even jewelry.
Interesting.
What matters is the weight and purity of the underlying commodity.
Okay.
It's the intrinsic value of the metal itself that counts.
So if I melt down a gold coin into a blob, it's still worth the same.
Exactly.
Interesting.
It's a bit like water,
Okay.
whether it's in a glass,
Uh-huh.
a bucket,
Okay.
or a swimming pool,
Yeah.
it's still water.
Right.
The container doesn't change its fundamental nature.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a crucial point, the concept of a proper money supply.
Okay, this is where things get a bit more complex, right?
Mm-hmm.
How much money should be circulating in an economy?
Rothbard argues that in a free market,
Yeah.
the money supply self-adjusts.
Interesting.
The price of money,
Okay.
its purchasing power,
Right.
fluctuates based on supply and demand.
Uh-huh.
If there's too much money chasing too few goods,
Yeah.
prices go up.
Makes sense.
If there's a shortage of money, prices fall.
Okay.
It's a self-regulating system.
So there's no need for a central authority to control the amount of money in circulation.
That's precisely what Rothbard contends.
Okay.
He believes that government intervention in the money supply
Yeah.
is not only unnecessary, but often harmful.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That leads to another question that's often debated.
Uh-huh.
What about hoarding?
Yeah.
Is it always a bad thing for people to hold on to their cash?
Yeah. Rothbard offers a fresh perspective on this.
Okay.
He argues that hoarding
Yeah.
or holding cash
Right.
is a rational response to uncertainty.
Well.
When people are unsure about the future,
Yeah.
they tend to hold on to their savings,
Okay.
which can actually have a stabilizing effect on the economy.
So rather than being a greedy act,
Yeah.
holding cash can be a way of preserving wealth during uncertain times.
Exactly. It can even lead to lower prices,
Interesting.
making goods and services more affordable for those who are spending.
Okay.
It's a natural market mechanism that helps to balance things out.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah.
But what about the idea of stabilizing prices?
Sure.
Don't we need some form of control to prevent wild fluctuations?
That's a common argument in favor of government intervention.
Yeah.
But Rothbard cautions against attempts to fix prices artificially.
Yeah.
He argues that price fluctuations are essential signals in a free market,
Uh-huh.
reflecting changes in supply and demand
Right.
and guiding resources to where they are most needed.
So trying to control prices might actually do more harm than good.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Imagine a world where the price of bread is fixed by the government,
Okay.
regardless of how much wheat is available or how many people want to buy it.
Right.
This would lead to shortages,
Yeah.
surpluses,
Makes sense.
and ultimately distort the natural flow of resources in the market.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Now, I've always been fascinated by the history of money.
Uh-huh.
Didn't private coinage exist at one point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Rothbard points out that private coinage thrived.
Yeah. Despite repeated attempts by governments to monopolize minting,
Okay.
private minters competed on quality and reputation,
Yeah.
offering assurances of weight and fineness that people trusted.
Uh-huh.
It's a testament to the market's ability to provide innovative solutions.
But what about Gresham's law?
Yeah.
Doesn't that suggest that bad money drives out good money?
Gresham's law is often misunderstood.
Okay.
Rothbard clarifies that it actually applies to situations
Yeah.
where the government artificially overvalues one type of money over another.
Okay.
For example, if the government mandates a fixed exchange rate between gold and silver,
Uh-huh.
that doesn't reflect the true market value.
Right.
People will hoard the undervalued metal,
Okay.
causing a shortage.
So it's not the free market that creates the problem, but rather government intervention.
Exactly.
Yep.
In a free market, multiple monies could coexist
Uh-huh.
and trade at freely fluctuating rates determined by supply and demand,
Okay.
just like any other commodity.
That's a refreshing perspective.
So how did banks fit into this picture of a free market monetary system?
In their purest form, banks were essentially money warehouses.
Okay.
They offered safe storage for people's gold
Yeah,
and issued receipts as proof of ownership.
makes sense.
These receipts could then be used as a more convenient medium of exchange.
It sounds so simple and elegant,
Yeah.
but didn't banks eventually stray from this pure warehousing model?
Yes, and that's where things start to get interesting.
Okay.
The allure of fractional reserve banking,
Uh-huh.
where banks lend out a portion of their deposits,
Right.
proved too tempting to resist.
Yeah.
This led to the creation of money substitutes like banknotes and deposits
Okay.
that weren't fully backed by gold.
So banks were essentially creating money out of thin air?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a bit like counterfeiting?
Rothbard certainly saw it that way.
Okay.
He considered fractional reserve banking to be inherently inflationary and ethically questionable.
Yeah.
However, there are arguments to be made on both sides. Some view fractional reserve banking as a necessary engine for economic growth,
Right.
while others see it as a form of legalized fraud.
It sounds like a risky business, to say the least.
It is.
But how would a free market keep these banks in check?
Yeah.
Wouldn't they be tempted to inflate endlessly?
Rothbard believed that several factors would naturally limit excessive expansion.
Right.
First, banks in a free market would have a limited clientele,
Right.
restricting their ability to create credit.
Yeah.
Second, the overall use of banknotes and deposits would be balanced by the continued use of gold,
Uh-huh.
placing a natural constraint on inflation.
So market forces and competition would play a role in keeping things in check.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And let's not forget the crucial element of client confidence
Yeah.
in a free market.
Yeah.
If depositors suspected a bank of reckless lending,
Mm-hmm.
they could withdraw their gold,
Okay.
potentially triggering a bank run.
Oh, wow.
This threat of a run would act as a powerful deterrent against irresponsible behavior.
It sounds like a high-stakes game of trust and accountability.
It is.
But unfortunately, as we know, history took a different path.
It did.
Governments, unlike private businesses,
Yeah.
don't earn revenue through voluntary exchange.
Right.
They have a different incentive structure.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah, it seems like we're about to enter a world where money becomes a tool for government control rather than a facilitator of free exchange.
Yes.
But that's the story for part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of money.
Yeah.
In part 1, we explored the fascinating origins of money in a free market, how it naturally evolved as a medium of exchange,
Right.
and how banks emerged as custodians of wealth.
Yeah.
But we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We talked about how governments,
Yeah.
unlike businesses,
Right.
have a different incentive structure when it comes to money.
Yeah, governments throughout history have been tempted to use money as a tool to achieve their own ends, often at the expense of their citizens.
Let's unpack that a bit further.
Okay.
We all know governments need revenue to operate.
Yeah.
They collect taxes. But what's the connection to money manipulation?
Think of it this way.
Okay.
Governments have two main ways to get their hands on resources.
Okay.
They can directly tax their citizens,
Mm.
which is often unpopular, or they can manipulate the money supply to subtly extract wealth without people even realizing it's happening.
So it's a form of stealth taxation hidden in plain sight.
Exactly.
Okay.
Rothbard calls this counterfeiting,
Yeah.
and he argues that it's one of the most insidious ways governments have interfered with the free market. By creating new money out of thin air, governments can devalue existing currency,
Right.
effectively taking purchasing power away from their citizens and transferring it to themselves.
That sounds pretty sneaky. But what are the real-world consequences of this kind of meddling? Is it really that big of a deal if prices go up a bit?
It's much more than just a bit of inflation. The economic and social consequences of this kind of manipulation can be devastating.
Yep.
Rothbard meticulously outlines these consequences in his book,
Yeah.
and they're worth exploring in detail.
Let's dive in.
Oh.
What's the first domino to fall when governments start playing fast and loose with the money supply?
One of the most pernicious effects is something called the Cantillon effect.
Okay.
It describes how newly created money doesn't flow evenly through the economy.
Okay.
Those closest to the source of money creation, like government contractors and banks, get to spend the new money first before prices have risen.
So they get to enjoy a temporary boost in purchasing power at the expense of everyone else.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's like a hidden transfer of wealth.
Yeah.
From the late receivers of the new money to the early receivers.
Okay.
It creates an illusion of prosperity.
Yeah.
But it's built on a foundation of distortion.
And what about businesses?
Yeah.
How do they cope with this uneven and unpredictable flow of money?
It throws a wrench into economic calculations.
Okay.
When prices are constantly changing at different rates, it becomes incredibly difficult for businesses to accurately assess costs.
Yeah.
Profits and consumer demand.
Right.
Imagine trying to run a bakery
No.
when the price of flour is soaring one day and plummeting the next.
Yeah, it'd be chaos.
It would.
No wonder inflation is often associated with economic instability.
And the distortions don't end there.
Okay.
Inflation can even lead to what Rothbard calls capital consumption.
Okay.
As prices rise, asset values may increase.
Right.
But these gains are often illusory.
Yeah.
People may feel wealthier on paper,
Uh-huh.
but their purchasing power is actually declining.
Right.
They may even start spending down their savings, mistakenly believing they're richer than they actually are.
It's like a financial mirage. You think you're approaching an oasis,
Yeah.
but it's just an illusion.
And if inflation spirals out of control,
Yeah.
you end up with hyperinflation. This is the economic nightmare scenario.
Right.
Where prices skyrocket,
Yeah.
money becomes practically worthless,
Why?
and the entire economic system breaks down.
Right.
We've seen this happen throughout history, from the Weimar Republic in Germany
Right.
to Venezuela in recent times.
It's a stark reminder of how fragile our monetary systems can be.
It is.
But let's rewind a bit.
Okay.
How did governments manage to gain so much control over money in the first place?
Yeah.
It wasn't a sudden takeover, was it?
No, it was a gradual process.
Okay.
A series of seemingly small steps
Yeah.
that over time gave governments the upper hand.
Okay.
It often started with something as seemingly innocuous as monopolizing the mint.
So controlling the production of coins was the first step.
Exactly.
Okay.
By taking control of coinage,
Wow.
governments could manipulate the denominations
Yeah.
and extract seigniorage,
Okay.
which is essentially a profit from producing coins.
So even back then, governments saw an opportunity to profit from money creation? Interesting.
And this control became even more potent when governments shifted
So,
from weight-based money like gold and silver coins
uh-huh.
to abstract monetary units like dollars or pounds.
So instead of carrying around bags of coins, people started using paper money that represented those coins.
That's the idea.
Okay.
But this shift made it easier for governments to manipulate the value of money
Yeah.
because the connection to the underlying commodity became more obscured.
It's like replacing a tangible measurement,
Right.
like a foot or a pound, with an abstract concept.
Yeah.
It opens the door for manipulation.
And governments took full advantage of that.
Okay.
One of the most notorious techniques was debasement.
Okay.
They would reduce the weight or purity of coins
Yeah.
while keeping the face value the same, effectively cheating people out of their savings.
It's like the government putting its thumb on the scale, isn't it?
Exactly.
Wow.
And history is full of examples of this kind of manipulation.
Yeah.
The Roman denarius, for instance, was steadily debased over centuries, eventually contributing to the decline of the Roman Empire.
It's a classic case of short-term gain for long-term pain.
Yes, it is.
So how does Gresham's law fit into all of this?
Right.
We talked about it earlier in the context of free market competition.
Uh-huh.
But it seems like it plays a role in government manipulation as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Remember, Gresham's law states that bad money drives out good money.
Yeah.
When there's a price control on the exchange rate between them.
Uh-huh.
So if the government sets an artificial exchange rate between gold and silver,
Yeah.
that overvalues silver.
Okay.
People will hoard gold,
Right.
and silver will flood the market.
So it's not just about debasing coins. It's also about manipulating the relationship between different types of money.
Precisely.
Okay.
And to enforce these artificial exchange rates, governments often introduced legal tender laws.
Okay.
These laws dictated what forms of money could be used to pay debts, giving the government even more control over the monetary system.
So they were essentially forcing people to accept their manipulated money.
That's the essence of it.
Wow.
And when combined with debasement or overvaluation, legal tender laws became a powerful tool for governments to confiscate wealth from creditors and transfer it to debtors.
It sounds like a recipe for undermining trust in the entire monetary system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This combination of minting monopolies, abstract monetary units, debasement, legal tender laws, and the suppression of foreign coins solidified government control over money.
Yeah.
But the real game changer came with the rise of money substitutes.
Okay.
Those banknotes and deposits we talked about earlier.
So this is where banks become more entangled with government manipulation.
That's right.
Okay.
These substitutes provided governments with an even more potent tool for expanding the money supply and furthering their inflationary goals.
Wow.
They could now influence the actions of banks to create credit and increase the amount of money in circulation without having to directly debase coins.
It's starting to sound a bit like a runaway train.
And the brakes were further weakened by governments, permitting banks to suspend specie payments during crises. Imagine being told you can't get your gold back because the bank is in trouble.
Well, it's like being robbed with permission.
In essence, yes.
Wow.
This practice created a dangerous moral hazard, as banks were essentially licensed to operate while insolvent.
Right.
And historical examples abound. During the 19th century in the U.S., these suspensions became almost routine during economic downturns, fueling a culture of inflationary banking.
It's a reminder that crises are often used as justification for expanding government power.
Yeah.
Even in the monetary realm.
And that brings us to the emergence of central banking, a key turning point in the history of money, and a topic we'll delve into in Part 3.
The mysterious and powerful central banks. Stay tuned as we uncover their role in this monetary saga in the next and final part of our deep dive. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the world of money.
Yeah.
We've journeyed from the free market origins of money through the subtle and not so subtle ways governments have gained control to the rise of central banking.
Yeah. Been quite a ride.
It has been a journey.
Yeah.
In Part 2, we talked about how governments use tools like debasement legal tender laws and manipulation of bank reserves to gain more and more control over the monetary system.
Yeah.
But gold was still in the picture.
Yeah.
At least to some extent, wasn't it?
Yes, but its role was steadily diminished as governments marched toward a world of pure fiat money, currency that's not backed by any commodity.
Yeah.
Just the full faith and credit of the issuing government.
That phrase always sounds a bit ominous to me, full faith and credit.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean?
It essentially means that the value of fiat money rests entirely on people's belief that others will accept it as payment.
Okay.
There's no intrinsic value, no tangible asset backing it up.
So it's a bit like a collective illusion.
Yeah.
We all agree that these pieces of paper or digital entries in a bank account have value, even though they're not tied to anything real.
That's a good way to put it. And this transition to fiat money wasn't without its challenges.
Yeah.
For starters, as governments printed more and more money, the purchasing power of their currencies inevitably declined, leading to what economists call inflation.
Yeah, we've all experienced that. Dollar doesn't buy what it used to feeling, right?
Exactly. But it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
Remember those economic distortions we talked about in Part 2? The Cantillon effect?
Yeah.
The disruption of business calculations, capital consumption.
Makes sense.
They all become more pronounced in a fiat money system where governments have the power to create money at will.
So those who benefit from being close to the money spigot get even wealthier.
Yeah.
While everyone else sees their savings eroded.
That's the unfortunate reality.
Yeah, so what about gold?
Right.
What happened to the shiny metal that had served as money for centuries?
Yeah, what happened to gold in this brave new world of fiat currencies?
Right.
Did it just fade into obscurity? Not exactly, in fact.
Well,
Gold's value often soared as people lost faith in fiat currencies.
okay.
It became a sort of canary in the coal mine, signaling a lack of confidence in government-controlled money.
So even though governments were trying to demonetize gold,
Yeah.
it still held a powerful allure as a safe haven asset.
Absolutely. And this created a real dilemma for governments.
Yeah.
They wanted to maintain control over the monetary system,
Right.
but they also had to contend with the persistent threat of gold as an alternative.
Sounds like a bit of a power struggle.
Yeah.
How did they try to resolve this?
They resorted to increasingly desperate measures, including outright confiscation of gold from their citizens. Wow.
In the United States, for example,
Uh-huh.
President Roosevelt outlawed private ownership of gold in 1933,
Okay.
forcing people to turn in their gold coins and bullion to the government.
Wow, that seems like a drastic step.
It highlights the lengths to which governments will go to maintain their monetary monopoly. But even with gold out of the picture,
Yeah.
the transition to a world of multiple fiat currencies created a host of new challenges.
Yeah, I can imagine things getting pretty complicated when every country is printing its own money.
Right.
How do you even trade with other countries when the value of each currency is constantly fluctuating?
That's precisely the problem.
Okay.
International trade, which thrives on stability and predictability,
Yeah.
becomes much more difficult and risky.
Uh-huh.
Businesses face uncertainty about exchange rates, making it harder to plan and invest.
So it's not just individuals who suffer from inflation.
Right.
It also disrupts the global economy. Exactly. And in an attempt to bring some order to this chaos, governments often tried to fix exchange rates between their currencies.
Okay.
But as we discussed earlier with Gresham's law, this often backfired,
Right.
creating shortages of some currencies and surpluses of others.
Those pesky price controls always seem to create more problems than they solve.
Indeed, and to enforce these artificial exchange rates, governments imposed restrictions on convertibility, creating currency blocks, and resorting to the rationing of imports and exports. It was a tangled web of controls that ultimately stifled trade and hampered economic growth.
So the irony is that by trying to control the monetary system, governments actually made things more unstable and inefficient.
That's one of the key takeaways from Rothbard's analysis.
Yeah.
He argues that the free market, despite its imperfections, is far better at regulating money than any government could ever be.
Interesting.
But that doesn't mean we should just throw up our hands and accept the status quo.
Right. So where do we go from here? Is there any hope for restoring sound money principles in a world dominated by fiat currencies and central banks?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Rothbard believed that a return to a gold standard or some other form of commodity-backed money would be the ideal solution.
Okay.
But he also recognized that this would be a difficult and politically challenging path.
It seems like the forces arrayed against sound money are pretty powerful.
They certainly are, but that doesn't mean we should give up hope. Perhaps the future holds new possibilities for decentralized, market-based monetary systems that can break free from the grip of government control.
Yeah.
We're seeing some interesting developments in the world of cryptocurrencies, for example.
Crypto, that's a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
It is.
But for now, I think we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
We've explored the history of money,
the
dangers of government intervention, and the challenges of living in a fiat money world.
And I hope we've equipped our listeners with a deeper understanding of how money works, why it matters, and the importance of staying informed about monetary policy.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to something as fundamental as money.
Yes.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to continue exploring these ideas. Read Rothbard's book and keep those minds curious. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of money.